members, Mr. Balcom and Ms. Harvey, to joining us today on a nice day. You'd rather be outside, I know, but we're glad you're here. The first item is the approval of the minutes. Any errors or omissions, council? If not, I declare the minutes approved. First presentation is from Kevin Neat, Clayton Developments regarding Kiln Creek lands. So you can come up and begin when you're ready. I want to welcome those in the gallery with us today.
We'll put a timer on here, make sure I don't go over time. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of PAC. My name is Kevin Neat. I'm the Vice President of Planning for Clayton Developments and the Shaw Group Limited. With me today in the gallery here to help answer any questions you may have is Andrew Bowen, our Director of Planning, as well as Jared Dale, our Senior Planner. Back in February, we had a file in front of you, and PAC had a great discussion around it and surrounding our Kiln Creek project. And there were 4 items that we were looking for. And we were able to listen to PAC, and from looking at it, we heard lots of questions, and those questions sort of filtered through and then eventually came into a series of concerns. And so we really thank you for the opportunity today to come in and hopefully answer some of those questions and alleviate some of the concerns. So what did we hear? Well, the first thing we heard was, there's a lot packed into this request. And so today we're going to break it down a little bit more succinctly and really explain the why behind this ask. And so the general comments about why are you asking for this? What's driving it? So we'll cover that today. There's questions about wetlands and stormwater and the environment and how does that work? So we'll dive into that. Townhouses, why the change to 16 feet, multiple residential, private driveway, not feeling quite right about that, so we'll talk about how we address that. Self-storage, is that the right fit for the community? And then sub-phasing is really, what are the implications from a municipal perspective? So that's what we've heard, and that's what we'll attempt to cover today. So let's talk about the why. The why, a lot of this is to work to reduce some of the end home pricing for the community. So when we applied for the DA back in 2018 and finally had it signed in 2020, you can see the average price of residential homes in Nova Scotia was in and around the 250 mark. Okay, let's fast forward to today. It's now 450, knocking on 500. That's a big number. We all recognize that. Surfing on MLS and looking for, this is a townhouse in our development. This is the least expensive product we have in our development. It's coming in at 520. Like, okay, when we're working with the builders, saying, look, when you're building roads and it's $5,500 a foot to build a road, we got to start bringing this down a little bit. So that is primarily the reason why we're having these discussions here today. Let's try and bring the size down, therefore bring the cost down. Okay, onto the environment. So the big green wetland area on Block K, as shown to the north, is the area we have permitted. There's a few questions around how does wetland permitting work. We'll give you a high level here today. What I want to convey first and foremost is this entire 247 acres is covered by a comprehensive stormwater management plan. It is not done in isolation phase by phase. The entire project is looked at. That wetland, as shown in that location, it actually drains to the north along the highway and then down along Niagara River. It doesn't come down into the rest of the development. The rest of the development is comprehensively planned from a stormwater perspective, which means we look at the both quality and quantity of stormwater out of the development to ensure it's balanced. The picture there of the wetland that you see, that was developed, it's not a natural wetland, it is now, but it was a hole in the ground that we funneled stormwater through to balance that stormwater and create a very nice wetland at the end of the day. compensation, I'll leave that slide up for a moment. I won't walk through it. But when you go and have an approval from the province to remove a wetland, there's a series of steps. It starts with a detailed, robust environmental study done to look at the quality of the wetland, the biophysical function of that wetland, how that impacts the stormwater around it. It is by far a rubber stamp. It is an analysis done by our professionals as well as NSDOE's review and critique of it. If DOE does approve the removal of the wetland, in this case they have, it goes into a compensation discussion. In this particular scenario, we're compensating to the stormwater perspective. On to Block J. Block J is a series of 4 multi-buildings. And at one time we had private driveway running. The table said, no, I'm not so sure I'm buying what you're selling, so to speak, from that perspective. Perhaps it should be a public road. And that was echoed very clearly by your staff. So we said, well, yeah, you know what, that's the right thing to do. So let's move the buildings, let's shake them around, push and pull, and have a bona fide public road. So what you've seen there is a full municipal standard public road that'll allow, just like any other public road, snow removal, fire trucks, solid waste, everything. Then we studied the parkland, or the parking a bit more. We ensured we have enough space for 2 stalls per unit. Half of that is underground, and the rest is on the surface. But you can see how much green space that we've kept there by putting 1-to-1 underground. So, public road, and demonstrated that we can have 2 spaces per unit there on that site. In terms of fit and location, we prepared an image there to give PAC a better sense of what this might look like and feel like. And it's a nice transition from the commercial area into the residential and up against the highway. And we're thinking, okay, well, that seems to, it's on a collector road, that seems to fit with what we're all collectively trying to accomplish. So we think we've addressed much of what we heard from PAC. Let's go on to the smaller townhouses, the 16-foot wide towns. And we went in there and we asked for this type of land use over every area in the white, anywhere in the white we want to put it, 28 acres. Okay, so I think that was an overzealous ask of PAC, saying, okay, let's go back, rework, and say, where do we really think they should be appropriately placed in this development? Let's pull it back. So from 28 acres, okay, let's pull it back to 14 acres. Let's half. Let's really define where they would fit within the community. And it's shown in white. So along Allen Shaw Boulevard, they're lined along there with parking at the back. You can't see because it's highlighted in white, but it's rear parking through there. And then the other area is upfront parking in the front, as shown on the screen. Great question. Someone asked, why 16 foot wide? Why not 15? Why not 14? What are you trying? What's the magic beyond 16? The answer to that is these units are manufactured at our Prestige manufactured home facility in Sussex, New Brunswick. And the foundations are pre-manufactured at our concrete plant right across the street. And you can see the pictures shown here in our West Bedford development. These units are in our Mount Hope development. They're in the West Bedford development. They can drive by and look at now. And they're in every other, the ability to create these are in every other development that Clayton operates in. So it's from a modular perspective. That's why 16 foot is the maximum width you can travel down the road. That's why they're 16 feet. We want to put this type of product in there. It's built to National Building Code. They're a wonderful looking product and very, very functional. But we can control some of that cost because it's our labor. We're not subject to the high spikes of demand of whatever the framer wants today. The framer's a Shaw Group employee, and we get to pay them their annual wage. So we can control cost a little better. As I've said, they're existing now in our communities, and they seem to function rather well. Each one of these units will have 2 parking spaces, either out front, in behind, one in the garage, one in the front. There's several ways to deal with it. So that's over and above what you normally require for a single family unit. let's talk about self-storage. There's the rationale behind self-storage is this. We're working with our multi-residential builders to say, can you reduce your rent? Can you make your rent a bit cheaper, less expensive? And they said, we got to make the units a bit smaller. We got to make the parkade a bit smaller. I'm like, okay, well, how do you do that? I said, well, storage. So I noodled a bit on that and picked away on it. And what it turns out is people in the area that are selling the homestead, they have winter tires they have to store. They have Christmas decorations they have to store. When you're downsizing from a house, you have a lot of stuff. And so what the residential builders have been doing is building units big enough for storage. The problem is that it comes at a cost. So we said, okay, what if we had a 4-story office-style self-storage that'll adjust that? That way you can bring the unit size a bit down. If people want to rent storage for their things, God bless, they can rent storage for their things. That seems to be the right way to handle that. But I need to say this. We're not hung up on this. If PAC says not interested, no problem. Our focus is on housing. That's our focus. We think this helps the discussion, but if PAC said, I just don't think it fits, it's better elsewhere, no problem, better elsewhere. Drop it off the application and move on with life. But I didn't want to just drop it. I wanted to give the rationale first, and then obviously PAC can decide at their leisure. Moving on to subphasing, that is just a way for us to manage our ability to match the market. So if we have a 100-unit phase and we have market for 50 units, we don't want to wait until the market builds up enough to build 100 to build the phase. We'd rather build the half or subphase it, get that in there, and then keep matching market. So gone are the days of sort of just-in-case inventory, carrying costs, et cetera. The business side of that doesn't really work. So we have to try and match market the best we can. All that to be said is it's at the discretion, ultimately at the discretion of your staff from an engineering and safety perspective. We're not running out of bounds, so to speak, on that in terms of second means of access and that sort of thing. So it's at the discretion of your director of engineering and your development officer. So we'll take it from there. But that's the rationale. It's just matching market with infrastructure. So what we've heard, we think we've covered. You had such a great debate and discussion. We took a lot out of it, listening to it, and thought we can address a lot of this. And I think we have. When you look back and look at the body of the work going forward today, we're thinking, with your feedback, we're thinking we have a plan now that matches, we think, your community plan. That is a visionary document that you adopted some time ago now. We think, this matches your vision, your intention. Did we step a little too far and ask for a little too much? Yeah, I think we probably did, and you're course correcting accordingly. So that's what we're here today, to help course correct that, listen to you, and provide you what we think is a better plan forward. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't thank your staff in helping us right-size the proposal, saying this might be a better approach, this might be a better way of looking at this project. So I thought it's really important to thank your staff as well. So with that, thank you very much, and I'm certainly here for any questions.
Thank you, Kevin. Any member of council? What are we going to do here? Councillor Tingley.
Through the chair to Mr. Neat, the wetland that the double wetland you have to give back, where is that being given back?
So that is a variety of places within Nova Scotia. The Ducks Unlimited has a wetland banker, through you, Mr. Chair, my apologies.
That's probably all I need to know.
Very good.
But it's not necessarily in East Hants, is it?
Correct.
Okay. And the other question I have is this change to the size of the housing, are those rental properties, or are they going to be for sale?
They're going to be for sale freehold properties.
And do you know what the price point is going to be approximately?
So I left that out of the presentation just to give me more time to think about it. It's going to start with a 4, first off. Can we get to 450? I think we need to get down there for a single family, for a townhouse. It needs to be in that mark. We're trying to work on our costs because we manufacture these at our plant in Sussex, New Brunswick. We have a great deal of control over those costs. So we're still working on that, but it's got to be down around 450 or even 435. I can't definitively put something in a presentation and commit to it today. All I can say is that the whole notion here is drive that price lower.
Okay, here, I just have one question for staff, if I can. I have a little bit of a comfortable, a little comfort with hearing how the wetland is being dealt with and how the storm drainage is being dealt with. But I'm wondering, as we remove this wetland, does it have any impact on the rivers, the speed at which stormwater is making to the rivers?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, if they're altering the plans that they submitted with the original development, they will go out for review to Infrastructure and Operations and to NSE again. And, depending on the comments that we receive back, we'll, I guess PAC will be more informed about what that impact that might have on the river or anything else for that matter. So I don't know sitting here to tell you it will or won't, but I know that if the plan is changing, then it will get reviewed again. Okay.
Because, just a comment, one of my concerns is we recently had a study done on the property on the other side of the highway, and 44% of that was determined to be wetlands. And I'm not an engineer, but I understand wetlands has a lot to do with holding up the speed at which stormwater is making its way to the tributaries and rivers, and that has an effect on flooding, et cetera. So I would like to understand, if there is or isn't an impact. That's all the questions and comments I have.
Thank you, Councilor and staff. Councilor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just through you, a few comments. I'm very familiar with the Mount Hope operation and how that went. And for anybody that doesn't know, the construction timeline to get these units up and done is extremely, extremely quick. And it brings stuff to market way faster than traditional building can happen. I believe you're on phase 3 up there now, if I'm not mistaken. And it's created a micro community within a larger community. And from all reports of friends that I have that live in there, as well as my mother lives on the other side of the highway, so we've seen the whole thing be constructed. It's really a great success story that I'm surprised has not been shared more often to deal with the housing crisis and dealing with stuff, especially within HRM. The one question I have, what is the timeline? And it's great to hear the cost, you're looking at 520, getting $70,000, $80,000 off, which is great. How long have you been manufacturing these units? Because I know in manufacturing and prefab, a lot of the times, time is your biggest moneymaker. The faster a unit can be built, the more money you save on the unit. And there's gains to be made with experience, lessons learned, and even optimization in equipment, resource, and shipping. So how long has this process been going on, and what do you see coming in the future to increase the efficiency of your current operations, especially when you're talking about delivering from Sussex, New Brunswick, and a lot of other places, and migrating that together with your operations here for foundations?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are learning every day. And Mount Hope, thank you for your comments on Mount Hope. It's absolutely a success story. We've been dabbling in introducing the Prestige product within our developments for some time now. There's several examples in West Bedford that don't look quite like this, a different look on them. But what we're doing is we're making those revisions and refinements to do just that, is get that cost down and standardize the interior so that it'll work its way through the plant floor just that much quicker, because when you build the same kitchen and the same bathrooms and over, it streamlines that process and becomes much quicker. So we're starting to deploy some of that revisions and thinking to be able to, again, ultimately drop that cost, because you save it, as you said, Councillor, through time. And they land here now, and we rent one crane, and we put these together in roughly 6 weeks to get these moving along. So we're not there yet. We're working towards getting these better and better and better.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there are some aspects of this that I am okay and in support of, and some aspects that I am not. And I realize that you had to come back because council just wasn't comfortable with the initial changes that, it seemed like there was a lot in your first time here with us. The townhouses at 16 feet, so those are pre-manufactured foundations and the townhouses themselves at 16 feet because that is the maximum width that's feasible to do so?
Yes, exactly. So the box that you see being craned down, that comes on a semi truck, comes out of the factory at 16 feet, gets put on the truck and taken down the road. So that's the size of the factory floor that units roll down. Then the maximum width that you can take legally on the highway is again 16 feet. And so that's where the box begins. And then you look at the depth of that. Those units are 32 feet deep. That's when you start flexing. Is it a 2-bedroom? Is it a 3-bedroom? What does market telling you? And you adjust the depth of that. If people want a bigger home, no problem, you just make it deeper. That's the magic to the 16 feet.
Okay. I see that, from obviously an advantage from the developer's point of view to get more units in there. I see it as an advantage to people who hopefully it's going to bring the price down some. When I picture our residents there potentially, there's not grass or green space for them, but I guess at this, the world we're living in right now, that's what our residents are going to have to sacrifice in order to get homes that are affordable, is that they're not going to have lawns and whatnot. And parking, we have an issue on Sam Crescent at the top of Tyler and Enfield, so parking is always a concern. As far as the wetlands go, to be, altering wetlands in the municipality of East Hants only to, produce them somewhere else in the province. I don't really like the idea of that. I would like to see them surge in our own municipality, maybe even close to the development, but that's not part of this proposal. And my other issue is subphasing. I'm fine with the self-storage unit. I do not feel that that is an appropriate spot for it. And due to the fact that we have turned down several self-storage applications in the past number of years because they weren't in what we felt was a suitable spot, this is considerably less suitable than those ones. So I couldn't support that. And that's, so I question that. But that's my comments for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Perry?
Just to touch through you, Mr. Chair, on the self-storage thing. When you downsize and you go from a house into an apartment, storage is a big concern for a lot of people. And if you look at Halifax and Dartmouth and a lot of other places, these not a large footprint, but the 4-story, almost looking like an office building type of storage units is what is preferable for residents of densified areas. So I think there's warrant in looking at that and at least having the public look at it as well, because it's not your spot where you're putting your spare car into a storage unit. It's where you're storing a lot of the stuff that you want to rotate through your house that you don't have on site because you don't have your garage, you don't have your storage. It's something that's a very common, and even when we were in Ottawa for FCM, in developments where there's 30 and 40-story buildings, there are storage facilities like this within vicinity for that exact reason. So I think it's part of the way to allow people to still enjoy things they've collected over the years without having to make the building they live in bigger. It's easier to put all the storage in one building rather than adding storage to every other building that is built. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Musa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great presentation, Kevin. The storage place, like storage building, is it going in an area that's already built or a new area like that's being proposed to be built? Like, is there any construction around it right now? Any resident living there, or just a totally new area?
Through you, Mr. Chair. It is slated for Block K, as shown on the map. It's red. It's right beside the multi-use buildings. So it's a good transition use.
Okay, but
Oh, nothing's there for now.
there's
Correct.
nothing there.
There's
Right? So,
nothing.
so my point is the people who are gonna live around that, they're gonna know beforehand, before they move there, that this existed over there. And if they don't like it, they probably won't buy the house or won't live there. So I don't think that's an awful thing to do. It's great to have storage like in where you have 5,000 people living, moving to the area or more, to have at least an option for them to have storage there. And to me, it looked like a building. It doesn't look like storage. It looked very nice, and I like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Merriman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through to our speaker, Mr. Neat, thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. A question for you about some of the other blocks. And that was a question I had too, about what the latest thinking was on the location of the storage facility. So you've answered that, but is it possible, looking at some of the other blocks, and I apologize if you provided the information previously, but just to kind of color in a little bit what the latest thinking is about some of the other blocks?
Through you, Mr. Chair. In terms of the commercial blocks?
Well, I guess specifically looking at block K, I, E, F, and block 3. It's not jumping out at me what's happening behind the scenes here. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Indeed, there's nothing quite shown on the plan. Those, aside from Block K, those are all sold to third party now. And so there's an active developer with plans in the works. There's several developers, 1, 2, 3, 4 developers in total. They have a lot of commercial experience, certainly in the area. I don't think, I think I should perhaps leave it at there. It's a bit premature for me to be able to talk more about their private lands, but I think it's fair to say it's commercial service type of use that looks to capture those living in the community around it.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Counselor. Warden Rolston.
Thank you. Can be very brief. Just say, I really like your 2 parking spaces. That makes a big difference in people's lives. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. I see nobody left to ask questions. Well, thank you, Kevin, for your presentation, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of PAC for your time. Very much.
Oh, just a minute. Somebody back on the podium wants to jump in, so we'll let him come in.
Thank you. Andrew Bone, I'm the Director of Planning at Clayton Developments. Just a couple things to add to some of the councillors' questions. The question about stormwater flow, the requirements are that the flows be balanced. So the amount of flow that goes out of the wetland on a normal, under its current condition, can't be exceeded in the altered storm drainage system. So that's what Kevin was referring to as the balance. The regulations require that you can't overwhelm the downstream system with new flows. So what we have to do as a developer and a designer of the stormwater management system is manage the release of stormwater such that it mimics the pre-existing conditions in the wetland. So that might be retaining stormwater on the roof of the multis or in the parking lots with control outlets that manage the flows out so that the pre-existing condition is the same condition as the development condition. So that's one of the questions that was asked by council. The other comment I have is on the self-storage. The proposed self-storage is a interior design self-storage, which differs from what most self-storage facilities have traditionally been, which are outside access to all the units. This would be interior access generally, where they drive in through a garage. There's a central loading area that's internal to the site. It manages a lot of the conflicts that you would normally see in a traditional self-storage, where you have 24-hour access and noise from going in and out of the units. That's all managed internal to these type of buildings. So that's the difference with the proposed self-storage. And I think there was one other thing. Oh, the question about development in or compensation within the local area. The province always has a preference for compensation within the watershed if possible. And if that's possible, that's where the compensation would be. If it's not possible, they're directed to the other watersheds where there are projects. But the province always prefers or requires that the first choice be within the watershed if possible. It's not always possible, and thus it would be directed to some other watershed. So I just wanted to outline those 3 things in relation to council's questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that additional information. It's helpful. Nobody left to speak, so we'll thank you again, and I hope you enjoy the sunny weather. Yeah. Next item on the agenda is Plan 24-015, Clayton Development Amendments to the DA for Kiln Creek and Lance. And Rachel, you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a lot of this will be familiar to you now after the presentation by Mr. Neat. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. Just to remind you that the original application was approved in 2020, and it permits a mixed-use walkable comprehensive development district, which included 1,500 dwelling units, commercial developments, parkland, active transportation trails. So you can see the aerial photograph here, where I've just outlined the properties in red. And the development proposal, this is self-storage use. There is the proposed multi-unit residential, the 16-foot wide townhouses, and the subphasing at subdivision. So in the regards to self-storage use, at Block K, so you can see that's kind of zoomed in just a little bit more there, and that was identified originally as Block I, so has always been a commercial area for all the developments. So the multi-unit residential area is, they're proposing on the concept for buildings, for multi-unit residential buildings, and it will, the overall amendments to the concept plan will result in 100 more residential units. And as Mr. Neat mentioned, this area now has moved from a private driveway to actually a municipal street, so that will meet the standards as outlined in the development agreement, and will match the standard for the other local streets in the development. And the developers already mentioned the wetland proposing to be altered. This is the original concept plan, and it's kind of a zoomed-in area that focuses on the area that's mostly subject to this application. And this is the proposed concept plan. I wanted to just highlight for you today that the developer's also going to be providing a pocket park just in this location. So that's will be the land provided through the development agreement process. And the image here just shows the 16-foot wide townhouses from Mount Hope. So staff are aware that off-street parking is an issue. We'll be reviewing how the townhouses address parking, but as noted by Mr. Neat, and as actually in the existing development agreement, they are required to provide 2 parking spaces per unit, which is actually double what is required in the land use bylaw, because that's a requirement of 1.5 units for buildings over 6 units. But anything under 6 units, they're only required to provide 1 space, but this will be providing 2 spaces per unit. And Mr. Neat also mentioned that since the meeting in February, the applicant has adjusted the concept plan to remove some of the proposed 16-foot townhouse units. And then there's the element that is requesting subphasing in subdivisions. As I noted, there is an increase in number of units, and that's 100 units. So, but this count includes the removal of the 55 units that is now in this area here. The province has purchased some land from the developer, and there was proposed to be some garden homes in the area that's where my cursor is there, but that's been removed from the development. The applicant has submitted a traffic impact study, and that's been provided to the Nova Scotia Department of Public Works and the Municipal Department of Infrastructure and Operations, and will provide those comments that we receive in the final staff report. Planning staff will consult with the Municipal Departments of Economic and Business Development regarding the loss of some of the commercial land. And the applicant has submitted a post-development master stormwater plan. It's been updated since the original plan that was submitted with the 2020 application. And a copy of that has been sent to Infrastructure and Operations. But essentially the engineer designing that system is signing to confirm that that's the concept for the area. But just to note that each subdivision application, there will be a detailed stormwater management plan submitted at that stage. Planning staff will comply with the citizen engagement policies, and a letter and questionnaire will be mailed out to property owners within 300 metres of the subject property. And as you can see here, we're at the initial consideration. And the recommendation is that Planning Advisory Committee lift motion PAC 23 from the table and recommend that Council give initial consideration to the application by Clayton Developments Limited and authorise staff to schedule a public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Counselor Tingley?
Through the chair, I'm just going to make the recommended motion that Planning Advisory Committee recommends to council that council give initial consideration to amendments to the existing Shaw Group Limited Development Agreement for mixed-use master plan development in Lance for the purpose of enabling a,
Counselor, you have to move to lift the motion from the table.
oh, it's a table, okay. I'll move to lift the motion from the table then.
Seconder? So what happens next? We vote on it?
Now we can discuss the
Okay.
motion.
Okay, Walter, go ahead.
We have to vote on it. We have to vote on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're voting on to lift the motion from the table. And the motion is passed with the 12 to 1, with Councilor Rhino voting nay. Okay, Councilor Tingley, go ahead.
Okay, I'll move Planning Advisory Committee recommends to council that council give initial,
No.
The motion is on the floor now. It's been lifted from the table.
You can talk about
So you discuss,
I was going to just make the motion.
The motion's on the floor.
it's already,
Oh, sorry about that.
thank you, Councilor. Councilor Musa, to the motion?
Yeah, I just have one question about the 16-foot townhouses. Can you show the picture for a second, please? I should have asked it to Gavin before, but it's okay, I'll ask to Rachel now. Like, I see the grass in between the parking lots, like the parking spots. Is that gonna be covenant to stay there, or if somebody wanna remove the grass when, after they buy the property, they can remove it?
Design requirements for the townhouse units, and we'll have to address those in the amended development agreements. I don't know what that looks like in terms of whether it provides room for grass, but I believe Clayton Developments usually have covenants on their properties.
Okay. Because I will keep it like, they're not looking awkward, like when some all asphalt or grass or, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Dixon.
Thank you. Through the chair, just one question I have here is the questionnaire on page 12. Questionnaire to be sent out to properties within 300 meters of the site. That, I don't think really includes any residential people here surveying the existing. I think that should be extended to a higher number if possible. If you-
Through
Very
Mr.
neat,
Chair, so
sorry.
it would include some of these properties here, and it would extend into this area here. I don't have the ability to measure that right now, but it would include the existing residents that have moved into the Clayton Developments area and would extend out to this subdivision here.
would it- So that would include Cody Lane there as well?
Cody Lane, this,
Okay.
I'm not sure of the distance between the site and Cody Lane.
Okay.
But if that's of concern, staff could be directed to include that area in the
I don't think we need
notification
it.
distance.
You're getting a fair amount of the residents. I just figured like the distance wouldn't be that great, so I'll stick with the 300. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Nobody left to speak, we'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed, 12 to 1, with Councilor Rhino voting nay. Thank you, Rachel. Next item on the agenda is Plan 25-004, rezoning and redesignation of Havenwood Drive, Shubenacadie. Zara Gulapur and Debbie, you can begin. Who's, begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This application from RYC property in Havenwood Drive, Shubenacadie. The subject property size in total of 2.5 hectare, and for eastern portion is 1.4 hectare, and for western portion is 1 hectare. The proposal to amend the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw for eastern portion change designation from established residential neighborhood to medium density residential neighborhood, and rezone the same from 2 dwelling unit residential to townhouse zone. For western portion, change the designation from rural use to established residential neighborhood and rezone the same land from rural use to 2 dwelling residential unit. The application including a request to allow for the development of 4th Ann Street townhouse building for a total of 24 dwelling units on the eastern portion of property. The proposal to rezone the western portion of land from rural use is due to a retracement plan for the western portion, extending the property by approximately 100 meters further west to accommodate 10 semi-detached units for a total of 20 units. A stormwater pond is supposed to be located to the southeast of the property. Here we have proposed concept plan and MPS and land use bylaw mapping amendments. And as you see, we show as in red in western portion and eastern portion, and the stormwater pond supposed to be south side of the eastern portion. And there's some picture here, and as you see, the first view is shown the Havenwood Drive, and the second view is the land that townhouse is supposed to be here. Based on the last designation zoning approval for Havenwood Drive in 2024, the MPS and land use bylaw have been changed. The existing development portion of Havenwood is a public gravel road owned by the province. Under the requirements of subdivision bylaw regulation, the proposed road extension will be a municipality-owned paved road with a sidewalk. Policy analysis. Policy RD29 of the Municipal Planning Strategy is the policy that guides council in evaluating a proposal to establish a new medium-density residential neighborhood designation area. Planning staff will assist the application using the criteria out in this policy. Policy IM11 of the Municipal Planning Strategy is the policy that permits council to consider the proposed mapping amendments. East Hants Council has to determine if the proposed application is in the best interest of the municipality. And Policy IM11 permits Council to consider a private application to amend the municipal planning strategy where the proposed amendments are in the best interest of the municipality. And Policy 10.16 of the subdivision bylaw established that no more than 100 lots shall be serviced by a single road access. And existing lots, it's 25 lots, and based on rezoning approval in 2024, 47 additional lots, and the current proposal is 41 lots, semi-detached buildings, and 4 townhouse units lots, and for total is approximately 70 lots and 142 dwelling units. Any decision by council regarding this application is not appealable to the Nova Scotia Regulatory and Appeals Board. An advertisement outlining the application and including that it had been received and was under review by staff was placed in the Chronicle Herald, and the public information meeting is required for all amendments to the municipal planning strategy unless they are housekeeping in nature. A letter indicating the time and date of the PIM will be mailed to all property owners within 300 meters of the subject properties. And additional advertising will be placed on the East Hants website and on our social media feeds. And we are at the initial staff report. And recommendation that Planning Advisory Committee recommends that Council authorize staff to schedule a public information meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Zara. Councilor Musa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with the total lots now will still be under 100?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the total lots is 70 lots, 142 dwelling units. Now, that's not allowing for the semis or the townhouses to be divided into those individual units. If the developer did that, they could go up to 100 lots, but that would be the maximum. So at the 70 lots, they would be allowed to do 142 dwelling units.
So but the 70 lot without the existing one, right? Or not?
No, 70 lots includes the existing.
Oh, included. Yeah,
Yeah.
as long as it's under 100.
Yeah, it's under 100.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Deputy Warden McPhee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to staff. With the townhouses then, they're going to be counted by lot, not by the number of townhouses. But if the townhouses are sold, are they sold on separate lots, or how does that work?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So it really depends on the format. So if you go back to the site plan here. As you can see, there's 4 blocks of townhouses. So each of those blocks are permitted to have 6 townhouse dwelling units in it if you're doing an on-street townhouse development. So each one of those blocks can have 6.
Yes.
So under the 70 lots, those are counted in the 70 lots. If the applicant wanted to, they could rent them out in that way, or if they wanted to subdivide those off up to the 100 lots, they could subdivide each of those on-street townhouses off so they could sell it that way as well.
So
It could be sold, it could be rented, it could be either.
if it's sold, it would be separate lots then?
Yeah, they could do it that way, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, I would like to make the recommended motion. Planning Advisory Committee recommends that council authorize staff to schedule a public information meeting to consider an application from RYC Property Limited for mapping amendments to the GFLUM and LUB maps for portions of PID 4509-7227 Havenwood Drive, Shubenacadie.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. On before the motion. Warden Ralston.
Thank you. Just back to the number of lots again. I think where the confusion came from was that the current proposal was increasing by 41 lots, but it's not. The changes would change the previous proposal, which was for 47 lots. Current proposal is 41 lots. Understanding that if the concept, additional lots, that the concept plan changes, could be plus or minus a few, depending
Yes.
on what's approved. But overall, we're looking at, previously it was 72, under this one, I think it's like 66 or something like that. And depending on whether or not the townhouses were subdivided, as you've said, so.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so there's 70, and then if you subdivide the townhouses, you'd have 6 per each one of those lots. So it would easily reach your 100. So if you go back to the satellite image, so each one of those.
Okay, yeah, I see.
Yeah.
I missed the 4 townhouse lots
Okay.
when I did my math. That's okay, thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Nobody left to speak, we'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously.
Good job.
Thank you, Zara, for that report. Next item on the agenda is Plan 25-003, Serenity Lodge amendments to official community plan. And Debbie, you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on March 26th, Council passed the following motion to direct staff to find a way forward to assist Ms. McCaskill to separate her business and dwelling to PIDS through a development agreement or an alternative, and that's for Serenity Lodge. Under the current land use bylaw regulations, the subdivision of land cannot take place on a right-of-way easement in the growth management areas serviced by municipal water and wastewater. A variety of items have to be addressed prior to the owner of Serenity Lodge being able to subdivide her property into 2 lots. So just for context, the property is located with frontage on Bakery Lane, and it's right here. There are 2 lots, 2 buildings on the subject property, 53 Bakery Lane and 39 Russell McKean Drive. So here we have the house located here, and then the Serenity Lodge is up here. The total area of the subject property is 1.44 hectares. The lot has 6 meters of frontage on Bakery Lane. The subject property is zoned 2 dwelling unit residential R2 zone. Adjoining properties are also zoned R2, so that's all this bright yellow, and there's a little bit of R1 on the road and behind. There's an existing development agreement on the subject lands that permits Serenity Lodge, which is a seniors care facility and considered an institutional use. Bakery Lane is owned by the provincial government, and Russell McKean Drive is a private right-of-way easement owned by the McKean and extended family. And again, this is just the satellite image showing the subject property, Russell McKean Drive, Bakery Lane, and the adjoining lands. The following list of items have to be completed prior to the subdivision of land to take place. Amendments to the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw are required. A new policy and regulation are required to be added to the planning documents to permit council to consider the subdivision of land for institutional use, IU zone uses on existing right-of-way easement in the growth management areas on land that is zoned 2 dwelling unit residential R2 zone. The MPS and land use bylaw already contain a policy and regulation that permits council to consider development agreements for institutional use, IU zone uses by development agreement on R2 zone lands. The existing development agreement, which currently permits Serenity Lodge, needs to be substantially amended so that the proposal can be considered under council's new proposed policy. And the property owner must acquire land with frontage from 53 Russell McKean Drive in order to have frontage on Russell McKean Drive on the right-of-way easement. The lot currently has no frontage on that drive, and the 2 property owners are related and they're working together. The proposal does not enable other lots to be subdivided with frontage on Russell McKean Drive for other purposes. If the existing landowners are interested in developing their lands in the future, Russell McKean Drive will have to be upgraded to a public road so that it may be taken over by the municipality. And the amendments to the municipal planning documents and a substantial development agreement amendment can run concurrently. However, the MPS amendments will have to be in effect prior to the development agreement being entered into and registered on the subject lands. And so this is just the proposed policy and regulation to be added to our planning documents. And it just states that the subdivision of land on an existing right-of-way easement in a growth management area to permit an institutional use, IU zone use. So citizen engagement, we've already placed an advertisement in the Chronicle Herald. Public information meeting is required for all amendments to the municipal planning strategy unless they are housekeeping in nature. And unless directed otherwise, a letter indicating the time and date of the public information meeting will be mailed to all property owners in residence within 300 meters of the subject property. And additional advertising will be placed in the East Hants website and on our social media feeds. And the recommendation is that Planning Advisory Committee recommends the council authorize staff to schedule a public information meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. Warden Ralston.
Thank you. Just like to kudos to staff for coming up with a way that could permit this to happen without, I think, any too much undue stress in the situation. So at this time, I'm going to move that Planning Advisory Committee recommends that council authorize staff schedule a public information meeting to consider a proposal to amend the MPS and LUB by adopting policies that will permit council to consider entering into a development agreement on land zone 2 dwelling unit residential R2 zone to permit institutional use IU zone uses to be subdivided on an existing right-of-way easement in a growth management area.
Thank you, Warden. Councilor Musa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just one question. If you can go back to the picture. So my point is by allowing them to subdivide of a right-of-way, so what's the difference if they make their own right-of-way on their own land and use that? So of a right-of-way, so what's the difference if they make their own right-of-way on their own land and use that? So
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe they use Russell McKean Drive currently, and that's where their driveway is located off of, so that makes logical sense is to.
okay. So they
have-
already use it.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds, yeah. And will they have enough
Lane.
What?
So the house, it'll be subdivided somewheres along here, and it will retain its frontage off of Bakery Lane.
frontage? Like, you have to have enough frontage, right?
I think it should be fine because it was developed with the 6 meters because there was some sort of clause in the regulation. So I don't think, as long as we're not making the issue worse, I think it should be fine.
Yeah, but I don't think it's
There's
it's doable this way because we had the same problem like on one of my daughter's properties, and if she didn't have, she was short like a little bit, and
So you, Mr. Chair, so the property already has 6 meters of frontage on Bakery Lane, and that's all the frontage it has currently. And the reason it has 6 meters of frontage, I believe, I'm not 100% sure on this, I have to go back and talk to the development officer and look at the old plan of subdivision, but we have a policy in our regulations for existing areas of land that are of a certain age that allowed for a lot to only have 6 meters of frontage. And I believe this lot was initially created because of that clause. As I said, I cannot confirm without, I don't know if that.
This was 2 lots at one point in time, so, and then it was consolidated into 1 lot, so now we're putting it back. So that 6 meters was there back in 2010, 2011, when we allowed flag
Yeah.
lots, so we're just putting it back the way it was.
but with our policy, is that possible to do that? In our policy, is that legal to do that, like right now? Like, I know if you amalgamate 2 lots, you cannot subdivide them unless you have the right frontage. Like, I'm not trying to oppose it, I'm 100% for it, but I want to make sure we do it right.
So through you, Mr. Chair.
Could you go to the podium so everybody can hear?
Or if you come down here with me.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
This 6 meter frontage was already there. So it's lawfully existing. So we're not making it worse. It was already there. They consolidated them together. So if the only reason they can't repeal and we have to go through these policy amendments is because we would be creating a new lot on a growth management area private road, which we don't permit. So the one on Bakery Lane, they subdivided that to a 6 meter frontage. Oh my God, it would have been 20 years ago now, maybe? It predated me.
To you, Mr. Chair, it's kind of like a remaining area of land. We're not making the situation any worse. If you were, for example, taking away from that frontage, you wouldn't be able to do it, that's correct. But it's an existing area of land, so you're subdividing off a lot, this is what the policy will allow. And you're allowing that existing area of land to be maintained with that 6 meters of frontage.
If you guys say it's doable, it's doable. I don't know, but I don't want to go against our bylaws, and because it's gonna go to public hearing, and if was one of the neighbors like opposed it, that could be a question for anybody. So I don't know. If staff say it's doable, it's doable. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Eli, you have a comment or? Okay. Nobody left to speak, we'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you, Debbie, for that report.
You're welcome.
Next item is C25 bracket 159 and C25 bracket 28, accessory dwelling units. Leanne, you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in January 2025, East Hants Municipal Council passed a motion directing staff to come back with an additional report regarding the design requirements for accessory dwelling units with consideration around stick-built units. And in April 2025, East Hants Council passed a motion directing staff to come back with a report regarding accessory dwelling units on undersized lots and the ability to add an in-law suite or secondary structure as long as the setbacks and water wastewater capacity allows. So our current regulations for accessory dwelling units, there's three types. So your secondary suite, which is a self-contained unit within the single unit dwelling, a garage suite, which is a suite built above a detached garage, and then a garden suite, which is a freestanding single-story structure located behind the primary single unit dwelling. And in order to obtain a building and development permit for an accessory dwelling unit, the requirements under section 3.14 of the land use bylaw must be met. So this section details the requirements for an accessory dwelling unit, including the minimum lot size, maximum allowable gross floor area, height requirements, setbacks, and design requirements. So motion C25-159 relates to the requirements for the minimum lot size required for an accessory dwelling unit. So the current regulations for the minimum lot size are shown in this table. So if the property does not meet the requirements, if specifically it's an undersized lot, it's not eligible to have an accessory dwelling unit. But we do have a clause that permits secondary suites on existing undersized lots in the country residential, rural use, and rural use north zones. So for a garage suite, the minimum size is 600 square meters or shall comply with the minimum lot area, whichever is greater. And a garden suite is 920 square meters or the minimum lot area for the zone, whichever is greater. So should PAC and council wish to allow accessory dwelling units on existing undersized lots, amendments to that section 3.14 is required. So an amendment to remove the clause that states garden suites and garage suites must comply with the minimum lot area as described within the zone. So by removing this clause, it would the total minimum lot area for a garage suite would remain at 600 square meters and 920 square meters for a garden suite. And all other applicable, other driveway or on-site septic approvals are still required. So just removing the text in green. And for secondary suites, we'd be adding to the existing clause to include the Lakeshore Residential Zone as a permitted zone that allows secondary suites on undersized lots, and to add unserviced R1 and R2 lots. So adding the text in green. So secondary suites would be permitted on undersized lots in the Lakeshore Residential, Country Residential, Rural Use North, R1 and R2 that are not serviced by our essential services. So motion C2528 relates to the design requirements for accessory dwelling units. So the regulations currently require that the unit must match the main dwelling in material type, color, roof pitch, and there's exemptions for shipping containers used as garden suites are exempt from these regulations, as well as mini homes that are used as garden suites. Garden suites are also exempt from the design requirements. So to address motion C2528, staff are proposing the design requirements be removed from the accessory dwelling unit provisions. So this would not remove any the height requirements or maximum allowable gross floor area, but removing this regulation provides residents greater flexibility in the appearance of their accessory dwelling unit. but all applicable requirements under the building code are still required to be met. For citizen engagement, there'll be an advertisement outlining these amendments in the Chronicle Herald, and questionnaires will not be mailed out as these are not site-specific amendments to the land use bylaw, and a public information meeting is not required as there are no amendments to our planning strategy proposed. And if council authorizes a public hearing, an advertisement will be placed in the Chronicle Herald indicating the date, time, and location of the hearing, as well as all the information will be on our municipal website and social media platforms. So the recommendation is for first reading to the proposed amendments, and staff are also providing an alternative should PAC and council wish to remove the minimum lot area requirements for accessory dwelling units. So this would permit any property owner with a single unit dwelling to have an accessory dwelling unit regardless of the lot size. And this alternative would meet the intent of the motion that was passed. Staff do recommend keeping a minimum lot size in place for garden suites and garage suites to ensure that smaller lots do not result in having a higher lot coverage, because this would be a particular concern for lakeshore lots where you have higher lot coverage. It may result in some environmental concerns, including more impervious surfaces on the property, resulting in more challenging stormwater management, flooding, and runoff concerns into lakes. So that's an alternative, but the recommendation and recommended motion are presented. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Leanne. Warden Rolston.
Just a question through you to staff. As I look at the alternative, I'm just a little bit confused because folks in these areas currently who already have garages, putting an accessory dwelling unit on top of the garage, I can't see how it would have any effect on lot coverage. The garden suite perhaps, but I'm assuming in these, particularly you speak of lakeshore residential, but in the zones that would be affected, folks would have the ability to build an addition onto their home or something, which would cover additional lot coverage. So I'm just not sure I see the benefit of the alternative that is suggested. Maybe staff can enlighten me. I kind of tend to go with the recommended motion myself, but thank you.
Anything, Leanne, you want to add to the warden's question? Looking for clarification between the two, the motion and the alternative?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if someone had an existing garage on a lot and they wanted to do a unit above it, if they currently are under the recommended, as long as their lot is over 600 square meters, they'd be permitted. The
Just a minute.
alternative, they would be permitted to do it regardless.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the alternative that you proposed.
The alternative there would be no minimum lot size, so regardless, as long as someone has a single unit dwelling, they'd be permitted to have an accessory dwelling unit, whether it's a garden suite, garage suite, or secondary suite.
Okay, so I read that as that staff was recommending. Okay, I misunderstood the intent. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Councilor Perry?
Thank you. The warden brought up one of the things that was on my mind, through you, Mr. Chair, to staff. But with your alternative motion, all the rules of setbacks and everything would still be required to have happen. So if they couldn't just, if they didn't meet the setbacks and didn't make anything else, then they still could not construct that. Glad to hear that, Now, the question I do have is, in pre-existing lots that are under 600 feet or 600 square meters that already have a garage, they would not be eligible to make that space into a suite, even though it is creating no more coverage of the property.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's the proposal, yep. If they don't meet the 600 square meters, which is in the regulations now, then we would not be able to issue a permit.
Because I get the 600 meters, I get the 900, and I get some of that. The problem is if you're just retrofitting an existing building, you're not creating any more damage to the environment. You're not creating any more issues. And I'm not like square meters, and I have to use a conversion here. Because I know I've had 3 calls and 2 meetings in the past month with people in my community that want to do accessory suites that didn't meet the old requirements to do it, and I'm unaware if it's as it's written right now, if it will enable them to. Now with the secondary suite, obviously if it's inside the house, that's any lot size, so that will take care of a couple, but there's a few that one has an existing garage and one wants to put a small addition onto their house because they don't want to build a garage because they know their lot size doesn't fit for a garage. They would love to build a garage and put an in-law suite above it, but they know their property size doesn't meet that, which, you know, as long as now they can build a secondary suite, I believe that meets the intent. It's just a few people that I know that have existing garages and undersized lots. I don't know off the top of my head if their lots are 600 meters square. And I think that's, you know, so that's the only question I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Head.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the recommended motion. Planning Advisory Committee recommends the council give first reading to amend the land use bylaws, section 3.14, accessory dwelling units to amend the minimum lot size and design requirements, and authorize staff to schedule a public hearing.
Second it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Musa.
Thank you. I just want to know, like, they still have to meet the regulation for septic, and like, that's one of my concerns. And in our bylaws now, like, if you have a lot, how much coverage can you build on? Is there any ratio now, like we have? So.
Through Mr. Chair, there is. It's dependent on the lot size, depends
So-
on
so
the
if-
total ground area.
Yeah, so if the lot is like 600 square meter, how much building can you have on it? Like, I don't think you can have enough.
I believe it also depends if it's a serviced or unserviced lot.
No, I mean unserviced. Like serviced, I know it's big lot for 600.
It's 140 square meters for lots
Yeah.
up to 1,400 square meters.
Yes. 1,400 square feet.
Square meters.
If you have a lot that is 600 square meter, how much can you build on it? Like,
It's only applicable for accessory buildings, but it's 140 square meters for if you had a 600 square meter lot.
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Warden Rolston.
I'm struggling a bit because I'm not sure that we know if this addresses the issue that was brought forward in the first place. And I have concerns. I understand, you know, you don't want to cover the whole lot from property line to property line. But I still am struggling to understand that if you're in an unserviced lot and you have an existing well and septic that will handle the flows, why you could not go up instead of out. I cannot understand why we would want to prevent that, and I'm afraid that this still, in some cases, would prevent that. You can't, I'm struggling a bit to think that maybe we're not entirely fixing the problem, and maybe I'm seeing it wrong, but if you have an existing one-story house, educate me if there's a way, but I don't understand if the on-site services will handle it. I do not understand why you could not go up another story and create an accessory dwelling unit on that size lot, and what the harm would be, or, so, anyway, if someone can clarify that for me, because I don't think this permits that on a 600 square meter lot in some cases.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I guess it's not the way we regulated these things to this point. It's either yes or no. You can either have a garden suite or a, in-law suite, the three different ones. I guess the way you're thinking, we would then have to start regulating these by the lot coverage or square footage or something. And I mean, you raise a point that, no, you're not adding any square footage to the lot by adding on top of a garage, but most people that build garage suites build new buildings. They tend to anyway. You're still adding impact on that lot, even though the lot coverage isn't it. There's more people, there's probably more cars, more pets. So, there's just more impact. And we were in particular thinking about lakefront lots and the additional impact of more stuff, people, buildings around that lake. So I guess if you want us to go back and regulate this by area or lot coverage, that would be a different conversation than, the quick fix here, I guess.
Well, I'm understanding the concerns around lakefront lots, sort of. But I'm looking at a property in my district recently that an accessory dwelling unit was built on top of a pre-existing garage. And it didn't increase the amount of people or cars that were living there, because until that accessory unit was finished, the people were all staying together in the house, which wasn't ideal. But that's a concern to me that, as everyone's fond of telling me when I argue about stuff, we're in a housing crunch, and I just, this makes things better than they were, and I guess I can certainly support it, but I don't think it entirely fixes the problem that was brought forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Thank you, John. Councilor Musa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, 600 meter and 900 meter are good numbers because in an unserviced area, right now, you have to break a couple laws to be able to put a house on it, right, John, to meet all the setbacks, right? So if you have a 600 square meter, that's like little over 1/8 of an acre. So you're gonna break many rules, and if the lot wasn't an existing lot, you wouldn't be able to meet all the setbacks. Am I saying, you'll be close, like, to meet all the setbacks, but not enough to have another garage or another, like, I don't know, for 600 square meter to have septic field and you have.
Through Mr. Chair, if someone was building their main house on a existing, if it was a 600 square meter lot, they would still be required to meet all the setbacks, septic approval. But we allow on existing undersized lots to be built on for a main house.
Yeah, oh, I know,
Yeah.
I know.
But you still have to meet all the.
But you'll be tight to build a main home, like, to build another suite on it, like, I think the numbers are okay with me, but if somebody have a smaller lots. That's different, a different idea. And I don't want to block anybody from doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Perry?
Thank you. I think staff did a good job with this report and even the recommendations. I'm just wondering, we don't ever hit 100% on anything that we do. That's impossible. But as the warden said, in a case where somebody wants to go up a floor or they want to go on top of a existing garage and they don't have the 600 square feet, it's just a straight no. There's no ability to do it as per an agreement or as per a non-conforming use or something like that. There's no ability to look at the situation and say, you know, in that case, it doesn't hurt anything, right? I mean, I look at it as, you know, staff enforces the rules that we set, and you know, I don't, you know, I'd like to give staff as much flexibility as I could to allow them to use their professional experience and stuff to make, you know, assessments on things that could be done and could not be done, rather than just if the public comes in and saying, this is the rule, no, you can't do it. Because obviously then we've missed the mark on the rule. Is there anything that we can do to allow something like that to take place, where staff can look at a situation of those that are outside of the regulations on an individual basis and provide a recommendation of yay or nay, without having to throw the baby out with the bathwater or put you in a compromising position, because that's the last thing that I would want to do.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so if you wanted to put a clause in that said something like, where there's no net increase in the lot coverage, so for example, you're now adding something onto the top of an existing garage, you know, you could do that. And yes, that would address one of the concerns. You're not adding any square footage or lot coverage on the lot. So that could certainly be done.
I'm just trying to figure out what can give you guys the most flexibility to
Yeah.
deal with the public, to allow for a resolution that's both acceptable under your professional experiences and guises, and also for the residents who are looking to address a situation and making the lives better for themselves and their loved ones.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, I think that would be a reasonable approach if that's, and again, when staff discussed this report, the reason there was an alternative motion is because we felt that was closer to what actually council was looking for. But our recommendation wanted to sort of back that off a little bit, just because of concerns that were addressed earlier. So I think this is a pretty reasonable compromise. If you put, again, if there's no net increase in the lot coverage, you could have a garage suite. I don't think that, you know, is out of bounds at all.
So I guess I would have to propose an amendment. So I'm going to propose an amendment to the motion that the words adding, correct me if I'm wrong, Director, where the footprint of the development has no increase.
Where there's no net increase in lot coverage.
I want to make sure I get it right.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so something like where there is no net increase in lot coverage for lots under 600 or whatever it would be 600 in this case square meters, a garage suite could be permitted. So that would mean you either build on top of your existing garage, or you tear something down on your property and build separately.
Yeah. Okay. Can I just say, I'd like to make the motion as worded by the director? Thank you.
Everybody understands the amendment? Thank you, Councilor Perry. Thank you, staff, for clarifications. Nobody wishing to speak, we'll go to the vote on the amendment. And the amendment is passed unanimously. So, nobody wishing to speak, we'll vote on the motion. It's on the screen. The amended motion. And the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you, Leanne. Item number 27, lot grading and drainage. Oops. Council Perry?
I'd like to recluse myself from this topic due to a pet potential conflict.
Okay. We'll wait till that's done before we begin. Yeah, I'll get this in a minute. I can just making my notes. Council Musa, you want to say something before we begin?
Yes, I'm gonna declare the same too, so.
Okay. That's their choice. That's your choice, Counselor.
Mr. Chair.
Counselor Rhino?
I don't, I don't feel really comfortable if that's the reason, because they spoke.
Point of order, the councilors do not have to publicly provide a reason for declaring a conflict of interest, and it is completely up to each individual councilor whether or not they declare. It's not a debatable thing by council.
Okay, Debbie, you can begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So East Hants Council is in the process of considering amendments to bylaw P1200 lot grading and drainage for lots with on-site services. During the March PAC meeting, 6 options were presented for the consideration of Planning Advisory Committee. As a result, Council passed the following motion. Move the Council proceed with amending bylaw P1200 lot grading and drainage to require the submission of a lot grading and drainage plan for all lots up to maximum of 1.21 hectares, 3 acres, where no municipal services are provided, and authorize staff to consult with the public on the proposed change. 3 public information meetings were held, one in Elmsdale, Mount Uniacke, and Kennecook. And I'm not going to go through these slides again because we've heard it in the past, and I'll go straight to the citizen engagement. So as I said, 3 PIMs were held, and those notes have been attached as Appendix B to the staff report. Public information meeting is not required to amendments to bylaws that fall under Part 7 of the Municipal Government Act. However, because we were doing it for the amendments for the subdivision bylaw regarding stormwater management, we decided to do both at the same time. In general, home builders, developers, and engineers who attended the meeting were not in favor of the proposed amendments that would require all lots with on-site services that are 3 acres or less to complete a lot grading and drainage plan. The development community indicated that the proposed changes would impact the cost of homes being constructed and would increase the time to prepare information for permits. In general, the developers who attended the meetings thought that home builders were doing an adequate job of ensuring their lots are graded and drained properly, but acknowledged that there may be some builders who do not take the same care. Residents of East Hants also attended the meetings and expressed their concerns with the current lack of regulations for lot grading and drainage. They also expressed concerns about how future development could impact themselves and their neighbors if regulations are not put in place. The general message is that it's difficult to balance the cost of the proposed regulation on builders and developers and the need to protect current and future residents from lot grading and drainage issues. There were 2 letters from developers, and those have been included with the staff report. So based on the review by engineering planning staff and discussion held at the PIM, staff are recommending an alternative for the consideration of PAC. So staff suggests that using a setback from a property line may be a better method of determining when a lot grading plan is required. For instance, a structure could be built in the middle of a 1.2 hectare, 3 acre property and would have a minimum impact on the neighboring lands, whereas the structure could be built adjacent to a property line on a 20 hectare parcel lot, and the construction could have a negative impact on the neighboring property. So in an effort to find a balance between regulation costs, staff have also proposed other options, and they're here and they're in the staff report. I'm not going to go through each one of them. But in conclusion, East Hants Council may contemplate a wide array of options when determining how to administer the lot grading and drainage bylaw for unserviced development. Each option presents its own benefits and drawbacks. Staff are recommending that the regulations be established based on the setback of a structure from a property line rather than creating the regulations based on the lot. And as I said, we're proposing for structures located 15 meters or less from a property line or condo unit line. And the recommendation is to direct staff to proceed with amending bylaw P1200 lot grading and drainage. And once it's amended, I'll bring it back, and then we can ask council for first reading. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. Councilor Rhino?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I attended 2 out of 3 of the public information meetings, and what must be known is there wasn't a great of a lot of people there at the 2 I attended. But there was engineers there and there was developers there at the 2 different meetings, and all agreed that this cost was just going to add to the price of everything. And it was also pointed out that no matter if there is something put in place here, it's still going to end up a civil issue. So why are we going down to this road where no other municipality has anything like this? HRM did, and they revoked it. Why don't we leave it the way it was, or just leave it status quo? Or if there's a certain area of the municipality that are having issues, maybe they could bring that. They could have this in their area. But I don't feel like it's needed, and there's been no. I'm not aware of any issues in the RU2 zone now. I could stand to be corrected. There might be something in District 11. But that's what I believe. I believe that it's just going to add to the cost. We're trying to get more people to build. Young people are trying to scrape up enough money now to build a home, to construct a home, and if they're lucky enough to do so, anyway, one engineer said there anywhere between the $3,000 to $6,000 cost on that. And the engineer himself, he said himself, he could stand to make money on this, but does not believe in this. So right now, I'd like to see it as status quo and move on from there. Or at least if there is problem areas that want to institute this, then they could. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Warden Rolston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is one that I have been struggling with all through this. I am not aware of any current issues in the current District 11, but certainly there were issues in what was formerly District 11 and is now part of one of the Mount Uniacke districts. Absolutely terrible issues where people with brand new homes on new lots that they paid substantial dollars for, and then the lot behind them would get developed, and what a mess. You know, their sewer was flooded, and yes, it is still a civil issue, but it does give something. If you can go to court and say, the developer, by developing this lot in the way he did, caused my sewer to become inoperable in contravention of municipal bylaw such and such, it adds weight to their case. So I understand that. I also understand that it's becoming increasingly more difficult for folks to be able to afford to build a home. And it is not easy. And I think this new suggestion by staff would exempt those with certain sized properties. As long as you could meet those setbacks, you wouldn't need the lot grading or drainage plan. However, you probably would require a location certificate to prove that you're meeting those setbacks, and I don't know what that would cost. I don't know if staff have any insight into what a location certificate could cost or not, but I'm assuming you're going to need the same surveyor or whatever to give you that as so it is difficult. And then I also look at the fact that in the rural area, in many areas, we have lots of forested lots. And nothing in this bylaw would protect any homeowner, old or new, than from what might happen if one of those lots was clear cut. Again, I guess it could be a civil matter. But the bottom line is, I guess if you're a homeowner with a large mortgage on a property, and even if you have the bylaw in place that should be protecting you, and it doesn't, how many people are actually going to be able to afford to go to court and try and prove their case? And it is a tough one, and I'm struggling even as I sit here to figure out, because I see the value of it. I heard from some of those people on those properties that used to be part of District 11, and I heard the absolute despair that they were feeling because they had a beautiful new home on a beautiful property, and now the same person who sold them their home had developed something else, and now they were just in a horrible situation. So it is a tough one. One thing I will say is that I think the suggestion that's being offered here to recommend to go to first reading differs substantially enough from the prior suggestion of going with an acreage size that I'm wondering if maybe we should go back out to the public again in public information and say, okay, we heard from the developers, we heard from the engineer, we heard from the members of public, and many of you didn't like it. Is this any more palatable? I don't know. Those are my comments. I'm struggling with this. I certainly see the benefit of it, but I certainly see the other side of it too, and it's not an easy call to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Councillor Tingley?
Through the chair, agree with a lot of comments that the warden has made there. To staff, do we have any feel for what percentage of properties where a structure would be built within 15 meters? Like,
This is you, Mr. Chair. There's too many properties out in the
I know
rural
that.
areas to determine. I mean, it's up to a property owner. Even if you have 100 hectares or acres, you can still decide to build your house right beside the property line. Yeah, it would mostly impact the smaller properties where you don't have enough room to move your house away from the property lines.
you know, the way I see it is if you do have a bylaw, it certainly makes it a lot easier for a person to make a claim if they have to litigate it to get it straightened out. And in my past profession, I have seen a number of cases, I can't remember how many right off the top of my mind, where somebody would build fairly close to somebody else's property and, cause a mess for the neighboring property. And there's no bylaws and regulations, and it's just a mess to sort out. I think this is a fair compromise, but I'll wait to see what everybody else has to say about it.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rhino.
Yeah, thank you. Through you to staff. Your meters that works out to in feet, about 50 feet, correct? 50 feet?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the current setback from, that a residence can be built from a property line now for just setbacks?
Which zone would you like?
Let's say RU2.
Rear yard is 11 meters. Side yard is 2 meters. And your front yard setback is 8 meters.
So 8, 2, and what was the?
11 from the rear.
11 from the rear?
Yes.
And how much from the front?
8 meters.
From the front. And it's 15 meters, so now with this proposal, you would have 15 meters complete all around from the residence?
Mr. Chair, they don't have to be 15 meters all the way around. If they wanted to do a lock grading and drainage plan, then they could put their house closer, 2 meters from the property line.
No, without a drainage plan. What I'm saying is if it's 15, what I'm trying to say is 15 meters, you're saying it needs a drainage plan.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm trying to get that 15 meters, that's gonna be all the way around the house on all 4 sides, correct?
Yes.
Right? Let's say you had a small lot. So it's not so much in the rear, but it's probably almost double on the front and on the side where you can build 2 meters from a line currently, that is gonna have quite a bearing. And I'm thinking of if my own house is about 2 meters from a property line beside the post office. And now I couldn't put that house there today if this goes through because of that. And there's no drainage issue there, so.
You could put the house there. You just have to do a lock
Yeah,
grading.
but I have to do, but like I say,
Yes.
I can put it there, but I have to do this lot drainage plan. So there's a cost that's gonna cost me right there. And this is what I'm pointing out, so, I'm still not in favor of this. If certain area of the municipality wants to protect themselves by that, they should be, by all means, they can do so, but, I don't feel it's warranted in the RU2 zone.
Is that all, Counselor?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Hebb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I attended all 3 meetings, and the majority of the comments was from developers and engineers, and there were a few comments from the public. And it boils right down to it's going to be a civil suit at the end, and if you have lot grading plan done, that certainly is going to back the civil suit up. But when you look at the cost that's going to add, every lot's going to be different. And if you've got a 3-acre lot, and if you have to do the whole lot, it's going to be substantial. Now, you may not have to do the whole lot. It's still going to be a cost. And one of the engineers there said, you're talking probably $4,000 to $6,000 even to step foot in the property. And the bigger it is, the more it's going to cost. And that's going to be placed on the homeowner. The developer's just going to pass that down. It was, and it's actually noted in the report too, that most contractors are very constant in what they're doing, just simply because if they don't, they're going to work themselves out of a job. So I think they're policing themselves as much as they can right now. What this does not address is that if you have a lot there and the water is running down onto that lot, you buy that lot, the lot may not even be developed, but then you've got a drainage issue from that lot onto yours. So does that mean you have to have a lot grading plot done just because the landowner's land is draining onto you? If you follow what I'm saying? I know it's confusing, but.
So you, Mr. Chair, the way that it's worded is it doesn't take into consideration what's draining onto you. It takes into consideration if you're building a structure and that structure's within 15 meters of that property line, then a lot grading and drainage plan is required. Now, if that next door neighbor is draining water onto you and you build that structure there, then it probably does have to take into consideration if that is going to impact your structure or the neighboring properties or something like that. If you then build a structure and it then veers differently.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If the structure's already there, you'll build beside it, the water you know now is coming onto that. So that means that you, when you build that lot, you're gonna have to deal with the draining issue, not the land next to you. Am I correct there? If you follow, I know it's
I'm not
confusing.
100% if I
Well,
follow
somebody has a
your-
piece, just a piece of land here, water sloping this way, so I build my lot here, and I know the water's gonna be coming on there. So now I have to build a drainage issue to compensate for that water that's coming on there. And it'd be no different if there was a house there draining water onto that property when I bought that property. Now, he didn't have to have a draining, lot grading done.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna have to, but I'm gonna have to deal with the water that's already coming onto my property from that property.
Yeah, you'd have to take into consideration all the drainage issues, whether it's,
Where the water comes from.
yeah, it doesn't matter where the water comes from.
Right, yeah, so, I mean, I'm like Councillor Olson, I'm kind of stuck on the border here, but, I'm not aware, and I know there's issues out there, there's probably more issues gonna come, but, I'm kind of on the premises is to, do the status quo right now, to stay the way it is, and if it becomes a major problem, this is something we can deal with down the road, but I don't think it's not a major issue across the whole municipality right now, and then there are gonna be a few for sure, but we can't solve all problems. And when I add in the cost of all this is gonna cost extra, and the time-wise, that was a big issue brought up too, about the time-wise, and, you know, you gotta have a lot grading done, then you gotta hire an engineer, so he's not gonna be there right there tomorrow, it's gonna be 2 or 3 weeks down the road, or it could be a month down the road, and it could be another month for him to get that done, so then you're 6 months down before you even start the project, so. My preference is to stay the status quo. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Marion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I think one of the issues here is there's, you know, a big difference between regulation and enforcement. And, you know, regulation, yes, you know, I think, of course, there are benefits, but we don't have any role at all on the enforcement side of things. So that's just a thought. But I would appreciate, through the chair back to staff, and I apologize because I think you've already communicated this to us previously, but could I please get a synopsis in Nova Scotia of other municipalities? I understand the history with Halifax, so they've had it and now they don't. But could you just give me a quick synopsis of, are there other municipal jurisdictions in the province that have similar legislation?
Through Mr. Chair, as far as I'm aware, there are no other jurisdictions. Halifax was the only one that had brought it in. I think it was 2017, said in my old staff report. And then they brought it in, and then they had kind of public outcry, and then they decided not to do it because of the cost. Now, they did it in a different method that applied to all lots, I believe, that were unserviced. So they didn't have a criteria over setbacks or lot size or anything like that. So, and I'm not quite sure, most of the municipalities that I looked at, I believe, were in Ontario, and then a couple in Prince Edward Island. I think Summerside, even if it's unserviced, they require lot grading and drainage within their boundaries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Warden Rolston?
Thank you. Well, just to muddy the waters a little more, the very first time this was brought forward, and it went nowhere, I think I brought it forward. And at that time, the concern was, well, let's look at, for example, the flooding problems in Elmwood subdivision. And who would have thought 30, 40 years ago, it wasn't a big deal, there wasn't any problem. Who could have foreseen that things would get to the point that they are today? And I think the idea was to get out ahead of things. It's never popular when you put more regulation on people, and it costs money. But I'll bet you that the folks in Elmwood would have happily paid an extra few $1,000s per lot if many of them could have prevented the situations that they experience today. Now, I know in the unserviced area, we're a long way away from an Elmwood subdivision, but I think at some point in time, the idea is to prepare for the future by not allowing something like that to happen in the future, to provide some protection for people. And that's part of why I'm kind of hung up on it, because I do see the benefit, because I see what happened in the past before there was regulation, and I see the results of that. And so I'll probably be right down to the wire when I go to push the button before I figure out how I'm going to go on this, because I understand the arguments from both sides, and it is not an easy decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Counselor Rhino, something new?
Well, I'm going to throw this out there. So I would move at the current time that we remain with the status quo as the bylaw is written with regard to lot range.
Is that a motion or just a
I
comment?
just moved. I moved it.
So moved and second. Deputy Warden McPhee, you were on, so I'll give you some leeway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, just basically going on to say that as much as I've thought about this and wondered, I don't think I can be in favor of bringing in more regulation, more expense. So I guess I would be supporting Councillor Rhino's motion. Thank you.
Nobody left to speak? Well, sorry. Warden
Yeah.
Rolston?
Well, I guess as I ponder through it, there's nothing to say that we can't look at this again in a year, 2 years, or 3 years if things do become more difficult. Anyway, if we don't do it now, there's nothing to say we can't do something in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Nobody left to speak, we'll go to the vote. We're voting on Councilor Rhino's motion for those. And the motion is passed 9-2 with myself and Councilor Tingley voting nay. Now, this motion wasn't brought up, so we just move on. Okay, that's good. Last item on the agenda is amendments to Village Core Zone. Debbie, but you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So East Hants entered into the HAF funding agreement with CMHC in February of 2024. East Hants must fulfill 9 initiatives to receive all the funding, and Initiative 9 requires East Hants increase the density from a maximum of 12 dwelling units permitted as a right to a maximum of 16 dwelling units permitted as a right through site plan approval in the village core zone. In order to complete this initiative, amendments to the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw are required, and the amendments will impact all village core zones. So the purpose of the village core designation is to allow for a diverse mixture of retail, service, business, and residential uses in an environment serving both pedestrian and vehicle needs within an aesthetically pleasing, socially interactive streetscape serving both a local and community-wide population. Under the land use bylaw, property owners are currently permitted to construct a maximum of 12 dwelling units permitted as a right through site plan approval. A property owner also has the option to apply for a development agreement for multiple unit uses in excess of 12 dwelling units and up to a maximum of 20 dwelling units per 0.5 hectares in the village core zone. To keep the village core zone a mixed-use zone, staff recommend that the HAF requirement of permitting 16 dwelling units be combined with a commercial component. Commercial development is essential for continued development of healthy village cores where residents can walk to local commercial uses. It is equally important to have land available for the continued development of commercial businesses that support the community. So planning and economic and business development staff have discussed the dwelling unit increase and recommend ensuring that a minimum 75% of the ground floor street frontage be used for commercial uses for buildings between 13 and 16 dwelling units. So again, you look at a building, 75% of that of front-facing facade would be commercial uses, and we wouldn't dictate the size of that commercial use. Instead, it would be based on the use, that commercial use. So if it's a cafe, we would need one size. If you're looking at a daycare, you would need a much larger size. The requirement will preserve the streetscape and commercial presence, but will allow a developer to construct dwelling units on the ground floor where there's no street frontage, and so like in the back of the building, and commercial requirements are not proposed to be applicable to existing flag lots. In addition to allowing for the increase to the number of dwelling units, both the maximum gross floor area and the maximum building height will have to increase to enable the increase in unit numbers. At their May 2025 meeting, Council gave first reading to amendments which included a maximum gross floor area of 1,888 square meters. The purpose of increasing the gross floor area is to enable the development of 16 two-bedroom apartments and a commercial floor area on the ground floor. Developers who attended the public information meeting indicated that the gross floor area needed to be larger enough to accommodate the apartment's commercial area and the corridor and utility areas. So they also they indicated in the market around here that approximately 1,000 square feet in area for apartment unit would accommodate market demand. And to accommodate the additional dwelling units, staff recommend permitting the maximum of 3 stories without requiring the third story being constructed into the roof line. To assist the Planning Advisory Committee in visualizing the mass of a building constructed to the maximum gross floor area under our current regulations and the proposed amendment, staff have provided an illustration showing the size of the buildings. So this is the current 835 square meters, and this is the proposed 1,888 square meters. So as an example, if it's divided over 3 floors, this is Les Turner's building and Highway 2. And it's approximately 835 square meters, 3 stories with the 3rd story built into the roof line. So the second image depicts a building with a footprint of 629 square meters and a total area, gross floor area of 1,888 square meters. And there's no current village core buildings that are built to 3 stories with that size because our regulations don't permit it. But the footprint would be similar to what we have with the Millstone and Lily Pond building. So that would be the same gross floor area, not gross floor area, footprint approximately. And then instead of a story and a half, which is what's shown here, it would be 3 stories. So there's actually a story and a half in here because there's a kind of space in the roof line. So changes are also being proposed to the following: the height to allow for the full 3 stories, transparency requirement reduction on the 2nd and 3rd stories, commercial component not required on existing flag lots, no accommodations general uses on the ground floor of the subject buildings, and new policy added to the municipal planning strategy to enable new regulations. And the full set of the proposed amendments are in staff's report. And these are some samples of just 3-story buildings with some commercial on the ground floor. And this is probably similar to the footprint that you'd be looking at of the gross floor area, so it's a larger footprint, except for you'd only be required to have 75% of that ground floor as commercial, and then you could have the entrance to the apartment units at the other end. Citizen engagement, so we've advertised the proposed amendments, that we're considering the proposed amendments on the municipal website and in the Chronicle Herald. A public information meeting was held on April 1st. 2 developers of the Village Core VC Zone land attended the meeting. 2 major concerns were the proposed maximum gross floor area being too small at that point in time, and parking requirements. And so there's no proposed changes to the parking requirements at all. A letter from Tolson Developments concerning the proposed amendments has been provided to Planning Advisory Committee for their consideration. And a public hearing notice appeared in the June 11th and June 18th editions of the Chronicle Herald. And the notice will be on the website as well. So in conclusion, the increase to the number of dwelling units in the Village Core Zone was a commitment that East Hants made when entering into the HAF program. The new regulations will be applicable to all Village Core VC zones. Existing design requirements will still be applicable to all new buildings, and new commercial requirements will be added to ensure the land use pattern lends itself to providing more human scale development that has an interesting fabric at street level. And diversity of buildings and land uses will keep the Village Cores interesting and inviting to pedestrians and local commercial development. And the recommendation is to give second reading and approval to be given to the proposed Village Core amendments, and the recommended motion is below. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. Good report. Warden Ralston.
I want to start my comments with saying I completely support meeting our requirements under the HAF funding. I just don't personally believe that this is the best we can do. Now, I'm first going to go, and I don't think developers even completely understand this, because I'm going to go to Tolson's letter. And it says the current allowance is commercial on the main floor would be 2,247 square feet, or 75%. And then they say the proposed new density, the commercial on the main floor would be 4,262 square feet, 75%. That's not correct. Because we're not asking for 75% of the ground floor to be commercial. So here's at least one development that doesn't understand the proposal.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. The letter came in prior to the public information meeting. So at the public information meeting, we tried to explain the difference at that point in time. But yes, you're correct.
Didn't get any correction from them. So anyway, here's where I'm at. I support the expansion to the 16 units, no problem. I still do not accept the contention by some developers that we have to increase the size nearly as much as we are to meet that threshold. Setting that aside, living with that, this 75% of frontage in the ground floor has to be commercial is just completely a non-starter for me. And that's why I'm not going to support this. Because you could have God knows what size building, but say your building had a depth of 40 feet. You could have a commercial stretching along the front of that building, reaching 75% of the length of that building. You know, depending on what you put in there, it might be 10 feet deep. Maybe you're going to put in some video games for the kids to play. You know, maybe you're going to put in some magazine racks. I don't know. There are all kinds of small commercial ventures that you could put in there that would not take up very much of your ground floor area, that would still meet the definition of 75% of the frontage. And I still think in order to maintain the intent of what Village Core is meant to provide, and I've heard people say, well, times have changed since we established it. We established Village Core to try and maintain the character of our villages. And if we don't think that that's appropriate anymore, what was put in place in, then maybe we should just get rid of Village Core. Because to me, this does not do justice to the intent of Village Core. This reduction of commercial area to 75% of the frontage with no square footage mentioned at all. It's practically meaningless, depending on the size of the building. It doesn't meet, in my opinion, the intent of what Village Core was meant to do, and I think we could do better. And those are my comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Councilor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Debbie, right now in the Village Core, like with our own, right now, like, are you supposed to have commercial at the bottom or commercial ready?
Through Mr. Chair, you're not required to have commercial, you just have to be commercial capable on the ground floor.
Okay, so I can live with that. But there's some area in the municipality that doesn't make sense to put commercial, like on Old Enfield Road. I know it's not my area, but it's totally residential, so I don't know who's gonna put commercial and how commercial is gonna work over there. Like that whole road is Village Core, and I don't think anybody on earth gonna run a business out of there because it doesn't make any sense to run a business from a dead-end street. Like, I can see it on Highway 2, I can see it on Highway 1 in Mount Uniacke, but I can't see it in those subdivisions where you have like all residential right now, and I don't know who's gonna be taking a risk and run any commercial out there. So I think one bylaw, one set of bylaw for the whole Village Core, it doesn't work. It's like forcing somebody to put something that is not gonna work. Like, that's how I feel. I run a business, and I will never run a business on a dead-end road. So I don't know if it makes sense to any of other councilors, but to me, I think we should be looking at the major road like Highway 2 or something, but not on a dead-end street. Like, I don't know if anybody can explain to me how that's gonna work.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Old Enfield Road isn't a dead-end street.
Like, I mean, like the one that lead to Bakery Lane, whatever.
Yeah, and we've just approved 72 units right there on the corner of Bakery Lane and Old Enfield Road. So you have all those people now that are gonna be walking. You have the Legion there that will add to the activity on the street. You already have the Celeste building there that has the commercial component on the ground floor. In addition, along that stretch, there are, as you said, residential homes there. Some of those wouldn't require a commercial component because some of those are existing flag lots, those ones that are deep there, so you
Yeah,
wouldn't
those
be
flag
required
lots,
to have
yeah.
the commercial component. It would be the lots that have the actual frontage on the Old Enfield Road, but it makes your center so as you're building out and you're creating more density, you have those commercial components there.
I'm sorry, I thought it's a dead-end road, but I guess I'm wrong. I'm not familiar with the area, but I still don't think like on it's a good fit for commercial down there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Gordon Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm not going to harp on this. I've already made it very clear how I feel, but I will just reiterate that we all understood that we needed to go up to 16 dwelling units, and that was going to increase our square footage. But to have a couple of developers come in and say this is what they want and that's what they want, it's very disappointing to me that staff came back with this large number. We could have met our objective with less, and it would have benefited the integrity of the village core and ultimately our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Anybody willing to make the motion? Counselor Tingley.
I'll make the motion. Give second reading and approve the proposal to amend the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw to increase the village core zone density to a maximum of 16 dwelling units permitted as of right through site plan approval with a ground floor commercial component.
Second. Counselor Hebb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, how many, just a maximum of 16 dwelling units, and that's to meet the priority of the funds. How low could we go and still meet that threshold?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if I
Well,
understand.
yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not explaining myself very well. It says that we have to go to 16 dwelling units in order to meet the funds that's being presented to us. Do we have to go to 16? Is there a lower number we can go to, or 16 is the minimum that we have to have?
Through you, Mr. Chair, 16 was what we had to do as of
16
right,
was
yeah.
Yeah, so we couldn't go any lower then?
No.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, or smaller, yeah.
Thank you, Counselor. Warden Rolston.
Just for clarification, yes, we have to go to 16 units, but they don't have to be two-bedroom units, and they don't have to be the size units that are proposed. They just have to be 16 units. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Nobody left to speak. We'll go to the vote. Voting for what's on the screen for those. And the motion is passed with a vote of 7-6, with Councillor Dixon, Councillor Hebb, Councillor Rhino, Public Member Balcom, Councillor Garden Cole, and Warden Wilson voting nay. Thank you, Debbie. That concludes Planning Advisory Committee for today. I will declare Planning Advisory adjourned, and you're scheduled for a break. Are you needing a break? Okay, we'll come back at 3:55 for infrastructure and operations with Councilor Perry, and there's
All right. Welcome back, everybody. I'd like to recall to order the Infrastructure and Operations Committee. We will now move on to item number 32, Private Road Standards Background, C25148, with Director Jesse Hulsman. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair. So this report is a background on private road standards. It was written with the understanding that to go back and help explain where we are today and some of the differences between current public road standards and our private road standard. So to do that, staff went back and went through the history of where it was debated. And it helps, that history kind of helps explain where we are. So initially, in 2005, there was the first attempt to create some level of governance with respect to private roads, and that was a bylaw to impose charges for maintenance, and that was to help groups on private roads that were having disagreements on who paid for what, giving them some third-party buffer so that money could be collected on behalf of the private road, distributed to the administrator of the road, and it'd be a more civil process than having to chase your neighbor for the regular maintenance of roads. The debate then was talked enough, like there was calls to counselors and over time and discussions on private roads, and it ultimately came to a head on a full discussion in the plan review. The last plan review was a decade ago, and planning did a white paper, a background paper on private roads and easements, and it was discussed the pros, the cons, the interactions on private road users. And one of the core recommendations coming out of that report was to create some sort of standard on private roads to help mitigate some of the disputes or challenges. Some of those articulated challenges were essentially, and I'll go into it in a bit more, on the construction or lack of construction. So there was a required footprint, but no standard as long as there was a design with a private road. You could build it however you wanted, but there was a design available that it could be built in the future to meet a public road standard. And that's how things were. But the end result was it was never built to that. Thus, there was challenges with people living on private roads, and they were frustrated with where they were. So what came forward was in 2017, as a result of that, a private road standard. And what's not really articulated in detail in the report is there was also a debate at the time, and there was debate in other municipalities at the time of whether to have private roads at all. And so it was a hot topic in HRM and an adjacent municipality. It was being discussed. And so the council of the day back in 2017 said, yes, let's adopt this standard as a starting point, but then continued on with let's debate overall governance of private roads. Should we, shouldn't we? If so, how? And that's what's articulated in this report. Is there's a planning report in May, then there's a planning report in June, and it was discussed. It went to public hearings, and ultimately council decided to maintain governing as is with a private road standards. But it was well articulated or well discussed over that 3-year period, and it started with the plan review. But I would say that in all honesty, there was no consensus. It was just it's a very debatable topic. It's a very challenging topic of what's the right thing to do, and we've continued on over the last 5 years since with just the standard as is. And so I'll talk a bit about in the discussion of the report, I'll talk about the principles that went into the standard. And so the theory was, or the the challenge with how things were being built is you needed to have the road right of way of a public road. You had to design it, but you didn't have to build it. And the reason developers were doing that is they were trying to provide a low cost development option, a lower cost build option. They're providing a different market segment for the municipality. And so with that in mind, what staff of the day decided to articulate in that is, well, if you're looking to build some sort of construction standard and have it built to that, the only way to maintain lower costs is to shrink the footprint. And you shrink the footprint, and we wanted to have some sort of principles. And within the TAC manual, which is the Transportation Association of Canada, there's different modelings of different scales of speeds. And we went to a smaller footprint. There's some design concepts of 40 kilometers of roads. You post at 30, and that was the principle. The drawback is there less road right of way as a minimum means you can't get future full infrastructure in. There's no room for a sidewalk in the future. There's no room for AT. There's no room for services. There's no room for street trees. There's all these other things that you can fit, and there's there's a trade-off. And there was a trade-off made in that, and the pitch and articulated. And that's what we've done today. And so in today's world, we have a minimum standard. A developer still needs to have an engineer sign off on it. They still need to validate that their design works. If their design can't work within the minimum footprint, they have to make it bigger to make the design work and sign off on it. And that's ultimately what is reviewed and approved. There's a table that shows a summary of some of the differences, and it shows the road right-of-way width, a minimum 12 meters versus a road right-of-way isn't set at 20 meters, but it typically is. There's some variability in a public road standard depending on what's being required, but somewhere between 16 and 20, but the private road standard could be as small as 12. You're not going to fit that going back. And like I mentioned, there's some design considerations are different. And so because of that, it makes it really is impossible to, if it was built to bare minimum, to get to a public road standard in the future. But that was the trade-off based on minimum infrastructure, minimum footprint, minimum investment to create that price point option of the day. And so that's it in a nutshell of where we got to at that time. There isn't, and within the report and attached to the report, I just showed the basics. So a cross section, it's pretty basic versus a public road. We've got all kinds of different criteria and design considerations. The private one is very basic, very straightforward. So I did misstep a bit in describing private driveways, something that's emerged since in the last 5 years that didn't play out before there was a standard. That we have this emergence of private driveways. I'm stating that it's more in the serviced area. That's actually incorrect. There's private driveways emerging all over East Hants. In the urbanized area, they end up being within DAs, so there is some level of discussion. What's happening, and planning helped me out to articulate it better this morning, it's not in the report unfortunately, is that a lot of flag lot designs will create a private lane, a private driveway, which isn't a road, doesn't have to meet the private road standard, and you can have multiple flag lots sharing an easement. It's called a driveway, and it's a named driveway that you'd see on a road that's not a public road. And so it's still imperfect because there's yet another workaround that's emerged. And so there's still folks finding ways saying, hey, we don't want to build a private road because we don't want to build to a standard, so now we'll make it a driveway. And that's just how things have evolved. But that option is in play. And I'm not saying it's a wrong option. It's something that people are using. but it's debatable. It's subjective. So I wrote a couple alternatives so we could, the debate goes back to where we were between 2017 and 2020, the debate of do you allow public roads at all? You could request a revision of a private road standard. To do that, I would suggest we'd have a few more iterations and reports because there needs to be a target. What are we trying to achieve from a technical standard? Because that's the help technical staff would need to say, okay, what are we targeting here? Something I didn't consider this until rereading the report and it had already been submitted is you could also request it be a discussion topic for the next plan review, just like the last time, and talk to the private laneways and the emergence and have that as another white paper and saying this is what's happened in the last 10 years. That's another alternative. But ultimately, it's about choices and trade-offs. That's what private roads are for East Hants. Decisions have been made in the past. They can be changed. You can take a different approach as a council in the future if you so choose. Staff don't have a recommendation with this report because it was a background report. We're not saying that it's perfect the way it's operating, but also there'll be trade-offs if there's another direction chosen by council. So just leaving that for now and open up for discussion.
Thank you, Jesse. Great background. First up to speak, Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it was good trade-off for the municipality anyway, because I can't imagine us taking care of all those private roads that existed now. Like, I know they're not up to standard, but the residents keep them nice and clean before any municipal or any provincial roads. So I drive on a lot of them, especially in the wintertime, and they're cleared as soon the snowstorm is done. Even before the snowstorm is done, they're plowed. People pay for those services, and they get what they paid for. So I don't like to see them changed. Like I know you talk about the flag lots. The flag lots happen because the road like you're talking about, I know where you're talking about, like the Mackenzie Road, Mackenzie Lane. One side fall in the growth management area, and if you want to put another road, you're going to pave it. And on the other side, it doesn't. So the guy decided to go with the flag lot, and he sold them, and they made that private lane. It's working. It's working, and it's not costing the municipality anything. And anything that worked for us, I don't think we should be changing it. Maybe change the what the name of it, like the specification, like the construction side of it, like the standards, and make it built to a standard that is good for the resident, because the better standard we have, the less cost it's gonna cost the people who's gonna live on it. I think that's a good idea to do, but to ban them, I'm not against. I'm totally against banning private road, because we don't have to maintain them. People love to live on a private road in a rural area because they have control over their road. Like they could lower the speed. They don't have to wait for people, for the municipality or for the province to plow it or to maintain it or something. So I think it's a good trade-off for the municipality. And look at Cottage Country. Like, it's a big, huge development, and we only took the main road of it, and the rest is all private laneway, and it's working. So anything is working, I don't think we should be touching it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Musa. Next up to speak, Warden.
Thank you. I remember all those papers about private roads and all those discussions, and I'll be frank, it was painful. It was very painful to get to where we finally landed. I haven't seen anything at this point in time that causes me to want to reopen those discussions and have even more and more reports on them. If we increase the standards too much, we might as well have them build a public road. My bigger concern is not around private roads the way they are now. It's around the fact that since we put standards in place on private roads, many developers are developing off of driveways and laneways and calling them different things. And it kind of, in my opinion, puts us right back where we were before we put standards on private roads. So if we're gonna look at anything, for me, it's development on private driveways or laneways that don't have any standards. And that's, you know, and I'm sure they'll come up with something else if we do that. But those are my comments. It took us a long time to get to private road standards. I'm not advocating to change them at this time, but if there was a will to look at development off of private driveways, and I'm talking about the types of developments that put apartment buildings and everything else, multiple units off a private driveway or a private laneway that doesn't have any standards. And, you know, there should be some minimal standards, I think, before you're allowed to do multi-unit development off of driveway. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Next up to speak, Councilor Dixon.
Thank you. Through the chair, I guess some comments for Jesse. Basically agreeing with the warden on the private roads are good. It's the private driveways. I know from speaking with the fire department, we have one in Enfield that you would have to take up the whole road to turn the fire truck in. And when you get in there, you're committed because there's not really enough room to turn around. If you add more houses in that area, it creates a problem. And it's they're in Horn Summit Road, now at Monte Vista Way. Some of the newer developments have lanes, but they're still crowded. I think we have to eventually look at that for clearance for emergency vehicles as such, would be my biggest concern. And I would think garbage would still come out to the private road. That wouldn't affect any driveways, I don't think.
Through Mr. Chair, for any development, solid waste reviews what their setup is and provides comments, and if there isn't adequate turning space, it's end of lane.
So we have a couple in Enfield like
And
that then.
so you will be triggered into, and it'll be technically decided what type of collection service you would receive based on what's there.
No, my main concern would be the entrance and exits around private driveways. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dixon. Next up, Councilor Mitchell.
Just a quick question through you to Jesse. Any idea how many private roads in East Hants?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I apologize, I don't have that number. I should have had that off the top of my head.
Second part to that, do they all have associations that look after them, or they just fly by night?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no. I would say there's a healthy mix of folks that function on their own, and there are a list that work with finance as an association, but it's a pretty even split.
Okay.
I think there's about 300 or so private roads in Spell, and I think there's about 34 or so associations.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Less split.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
It's all working together.
Yeah.
It gives me an idea, and there's Country
Yeah.
Lane just past Superstore on the hill there that you might be able to get in, but you'd have to back out, so. Just like one example.
330, 10%.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. That's all I was curious about.
Thank you, Councilor.
Cool.
Back to Councilor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I kind of agree with the warden about if we put a standard, people gonna build public road, not private road. But I don't say the standard should be the same as a public road, but a better standard, like in between, a standard that makes sure that when somebody buy a house on a private road, there should be an assurance that the garbage collection is gonna go, because many of those driveways that way they have in Cottage Country, they're not getting the services they paid for garbage collection in wintertime, because the road is not drivable by the truck. So that's where my standard come from. Like, we should have a standard that enable all the services to be, for the resident to be able to get all the services they paid for. Because when you buy a house, you don't know that the garbage truck is not gonna come until winter come and the municipality send you, okay, you have curbside here and you have curbside there. So that's the kind of standard I'm talking about. So if we could get something to enable that, will be good. But as the warden said, to bring it to a standard as a public road, nobody's gonna build private road, and we're gonna end up with all kind of roads that we don't, we should take, but I prefer not to take them. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Garden Cole.
So I just have a question. There's a new road up on the upper end of the old Enfield Road, so close to 9 Mile River. It's a named road. It's a very narrow lane, just wide enough for one vehicle. With, as I went in it, there were more houses in there. You would literally have to back up. How does that?
So, through Mr. Chair, that creates some of that confusion. Is that's likely a driveway, and what happens is from a civic addressing stance, anything past 3 homes on the same driveway require a name. So even though it's not an official road, it gets a name for emergency response or mailing and civic addresses. And so what we've done on our public listing is we'll actually list that it's not a private road, it's a private driveway. And so on our road list, we have public roads that are municipal, provincial, private roads, and private driveways or laneways now, because it's a new category that there's so many that we list them.
So it's basically a private driveway acting like a road,
Essentially, yes.
but not having to.
Adhere to rules
Okay,
or
thank you.
standards. So those are visible, and they have road signs, which is the topic that's emerged.
I'm just going to turn this over to the warden for a second. Like I said, good report, and this kind of reminds me of some of the discussion we had when we were coming to the conclusion of private roads when I first joined council. One of the things that I have noticed over the last number of years, and especially the members here on council that are in the fire service would understand, fire trucks aren't getting smaller, they're getting bigger. Right? They're getting wider. I myself live on a private road, which I don't even think qualifies as a driveway. It was built in the 50s. But, when we look at the technical data where it's 12 meters wide for our current statistic, we might have to look at maybe because of the increase of the size of the vehicles, we might need to go maybe another meter or two to allow easy passage of not only, I'm thinking of an instance where emergency vehicles are going in and residents are trying to get out. We can't have everybody stopped face to face, being able to go nowhere. And using, as Councillor Musa did, Cottage Country as an example, phase 1, a lot of the roads that they built, they only get seasonal services
Selection.
just because of the way that they were constructed. And I think Councillor Musa is right that part of the standard should be when you build a new private road that it is as best can be accessible for garbage pickup and things year round. Now, topography of some areas will make that impossible, especially if you're going down into gullies and back up hills, just basically due to our Canadian winters and ice. But where possible, we should make the roadways wide enough for the services and safe for people as well. So I don't think we need to do a whole rejig of the private roads. I think it's just a little tweak. But to echo what I'm hearing from most of the councils around here, I think we do need to, as much as I hate having more regulation on people, it seems like we need a private driveway standard now, almost, for the simple fact of emergency services. It is very difficult to get in some of these areas for emergency services. Pre-existing roads like mine, built in the 50s, you kind of got to do with what you got. But any ones that are coming out now and any of the development that's happening now, the safety of the individuals there, we have to take as paramount. Those would be my comments on this. I do agree. We don't want to take on any more roads, especially most of the private roads are gravel. And we definitely don't want gravel roads at the cost it takes to maintain gravel roads. So I think it is doing a good thing. I know a lot of other people that live on private roads, and they do like the fact that when they get up in the morning to go to the work, their road's plowed 99% of the time, and then they hit the main artery and they're going through 3 feet of snow. That seems to be the way it works. So, but I do think that the time that was spent on the last plan review to come up with a private road standard was a good way forward, and it could provide us the framework that we might need for a private driveway or lane standard moving forward as well. Thank you. And now, Warden Rolston.
Just back to the private laneway and driveway thing. Am I wrong in thinking that when developers come up with these private driveways and laneways, they're pretty much the same thing as what private roads were before we regulated them? What's the difference?
Through Mr. Chair, I would explain it as the difference is they're not creating a road right of way that is the width of a public road, or it doesn't enable a public road, but it's the same idea. It's just not built to a standard. So that is where we were before there was a technical standard.
I guess my point is, we worked really hard to come up with these private road standards to correct problems we knew we had, and somehow or other we didn't plug it off enough, and developers just started coming in and doing things differently so that they didn't have to build to private road standards. And I do think that, I think that's something we have to look at. Perhaps if it's in the next plan review, if we need a motion to do that, I think it's something we need to look at, because we worry about egress and access and one way in and one way out. And, there are probably a lot of little communities out there. Maybe it's a dozen homes, maybe it's a half a dozen, maybe it's 2 or 3 apartment buildings that are built on a private driveway. And I just think it's something we should take a look at. So I'm just going to throw a motion out that says we add discussion on private driveways and laneways and possible standards to the next plan review.
Moved and seconded. Two people want to speak. Councilor Husa and Councilor Cole, are they to the motion, or let's speak after?
Oh, I can speak that. Or to.
To the motion, okay. So Councilor Husa?
So when you talk about private driveway, is that like the one at Sobeys, like Sobeys Mall, or like here? Is that considered as private driveway?
Through Mr. Chair, that would be a private road.
Private road.
Yeah.
So it's the only difference is that you don't have the 60 feet right of way. You have like just the road itself.
Now,
which is accessible for everything.
Yeah.
So can you tell me what other development that I don't know about, like that what they're talking about, like which one?
So through you, Mr. Chair, an example of a private laneway, Samara Lane on Kiln Creek, the Maple Muse development that has the 4 mobile homes together, and there's a chunk of them, and it goes around from one lane. It goes from one public road to another, and it has driveways in sequence off of it. That is a private laneway or private driveway, it's not a private road. So that, like, there's an example of that. And then there's other ones where in a more rural setting, the private driveway is a combination of different flag lots, the hockey stick lots that are all bundled together. That's the most typical example that's now emerging.
Yeah.
I can't give you a specific one. But there's multiple off Old Enfield roads triggers that idea. But it's these unique shapes to get frontage off something, but there's not space, and so they're creating the land.
Like
in
the
behind.
development that Clayton did next to the Sportsplex is one of them. Like the 42 units, like small units, like 4 units. Oh, that's
That's
oh,
Summer Lane. That's it.
That's it. Yeah,
That's the Maple Muse.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So those are the examples. And what the motion articulates is staff would come back and be able to have time to put these into categories and come back with a real deep dive into the different categories. Here's the example that comes out of a development review. Here's an example of how it comes out of hockey stick lots, and be able to put some thought into it. I think that's not a bad thing to do.
So, so my other question is, when we talk about private road in a serviced area, how wide is supposed to be? Is it 66 feet too, right of way, or smaller than the rural? I know in the rural area it's 66 feet right of way with the ditches and stuff. So what the standard for the serviced area?
So the private through Mr. Chair,
The public, I mean the public. I'm asking about the public.
public
road.
roads.
Yeah.
So public roads, it depends. It can vary between 16 meters and 20 meters, depending on the scenario of how it can fit. But it could actually be wider. Those are minimums.
Those are minimum.
Yeah.
So they're doing that to get away because land here is so expensive, and to put like a 60 feet right of way, then you got to put the sidewalks and all your services. I don't know how that's gonna work. That's gonna take some room of the parking with the parking required and stuff. It's a tough one for me. It's a tough one, and I think we should have a lot to talk about it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Garden Cole, Okay. All right. Seeing nobody left to speak, we'll go to the vote on the motion. The votes are in, and it's passed by 10-1, and the system's frozen. Counselor Hebb voting nay. Yeah. Seeing nobody left to speak, I'll be looking, I guess we can be adjourned. Oh, sorry, Counselor Tingley.
I never turned it on.
Oh, okay.
I never touched it.
It just came on here. All right. All right, we are adjourned. We do have a policy meeting coming up right after this.
Hey, are we ready, Aaron? Okay. So we'll call this meeting for Council for Policy and In-Camera items to order. We have one item on the agenda today, and I will turn it over to Councillor Garden Cole.
Okay, the committee held its regular meeting on June 17, 2025, and the following motion is coming forward as a result of that meeting. Item 1, Council Procedural Policy Update. The Corporate and Residential Services Committee considered updates to the Council Procedural Policy to incorporate and clarify the Roberts Rules of Orders at the April 2025 meeting, and updates are now ready for approval. The Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends that Council give notice of intent to approve updates to the Council Procedural Policy as amended and attached to the Executive Committee agenda dated June 17, 2025. As Chair of the Committee, I so move.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Mitchell. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote.
This is with that conflict of interest.
And the motion is passed by a vote of 10 to 1, with Councillor Rhino voting nay. And that concludes the business in front of us today, so I would, no one left to speak on anything. I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, folks.
No, she
for
said it's not on the
a good
agenda.
day.